All right. Well, give everyone a chance to lock in. I don't think we've got anyone coming in yet. And we also kind of messed up the stream a little bit right before coming on. So we'll just have to wait a little bit for folks to drop in. Hopefully, they'll be able to catch up in time. Sorry, folks. User error in the control room. All right, everyone. Welcome, Houdini fans. It's now 3 o'clock Friday, which means it's time for Houdini Secrets. My name is Chris, and I will be the presenter slash teacher slash presenter for this afternoon's festivities with all things Houdini. All right, let's see. Last week we got into starting to deal with a lot of things with the digital assets and so forth and start moving things around. And then we kind of came into a situation of where we're creating buildings, we're creating objects, and we're moving objects left around, and we're using Houdini to kind of parse things and to move things around and to set things. And we got into things like called referencing last week as well. And suddenly we realized, okay, no one has actually created some kind of document, some kind of official way of presenting, said, okay, this is the way that you export objects from Houdini and get them to look proper inside Game Engine. Now I'm going to be going from Houdini to UE4. Now what I'm going to present today probably will be the same if you're going into Unity, but for UE4, this is what it's going to work, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate with today. If somebody knows of anything that I go over today and it doesn't apply to Unity, please feel free to drop in a line and tell me, and I will quickly make amends. I'm just like you folks. I can't wait to learn. That's all I do is learn all day long. And if you can pop anything that I've gone and made some kind of a mistake, please go ahead and tell me, and maybe you can become infamous yourself. All right, very good. All right, so what we're going to do is jump right into say like, okay, how do we get stuff from Houdini into Game Engine? Oh, gosh, I need a game engine. Holy moly, I don't have a game engine here. Oh golly, let me get the let me get this going here. I can't believe that. I was in such a rush messing with I was in such a rush today messing with my setup, getting things going. I forgot totally that I needed to go in and create a session and so forth. So let me get this going. All right, almost there. Okay. Now, while this is up and running and bopping and going and setting going, I want to go over a couple of details. And the details are that as there's a couple concessions that you need to remember that when dealing with Houdini and moving into this. Okay, let me. Oh yeah. Okay, first is that the scale. Houdini is in meters. Okay, you really can't. You can muck around with that, but by default, Houdini is in meters. Game engines, especially like UE4, I don't know what Unity is, I have to admit, are in centimeters. Why is that a problem? So that means 1 unit in Houdini is equivalent to 100 units in UE4. So that means if your unit is 1 in Houdini, you bring it into UE4, it is going to be 1 centimeter. And so if you thought the thing was going to be 1 meter big, it is actually 1/100th the size. That means it's 1 centimeter size. So it's going to be small. So therefore, when you bring objects from Houdini into your game engine, you might need to scale it up by about 100. And that's because that's the difference between centimeters and meters, right? And likewise, if you have something that is in UE4, you bring it over, if it's like 10 units large in UE4, that's 10 centimeters. You bring it into Houdini, and suddenly that 10 centimeters turns out to be 10 meters, and suddenly the object is really big. Okay, so you might need to knock it down to size. And so keeping track of that gets confusing at times, and it's easy to goof up. just keep on moving forward and know where those scale buttons are so you can scale it up or scale it down if need be. But if you're actually thinking about where it's going, just remember Houdini is in meters and UE4 is in centimeters, right? Okay. And another thing to watch out for, and now this is really goofy, and I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this. Now let me go into the demonstration mode here. Yeah. All right. Now I've got this. Yeah. Okay. I've got my. Hello. Oh wow. Okay. There we go. Maybe bop into here. Oh yeah. There we go. Here we go. Now we have as a my jack object. Okay. You gotta make sure that your objects that are coming out of Houdini have normals out of them. Because guess what? If your object doesn't have normals, it's not going to build correctly once you get into Engine. Now, this is an issue with UE4 for sure, but I'm not sure if it has to do with Unity as well. But if somebody knows, please go ahead and flag it or say something in the chat room. I'll see if I can snag it. But anyway, I'm going to allow the editing here. I'm going to demonstrate here. All right, and I'm going to drop into my digital asset here. And look at, let's see, do I have normals in here? Yes, I do have normals in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all of the normals in this particular object. And one more. There's one more object. Where are my cones? Z-axis, x-axis. No. Tubes, spheres, and boxes. Okay. Well, anyway, this is good enough. All right, so we have this object here. And we transform into it. All right. Now we have this object here. Now is renders black, and well, this is fine because it has these textures on it, and we're not loading with the textures, and we're not having the UVs on it. But if we were to export this, now I'm going to do here is just put in a ROP FBX output, and I'm going to bring that right into here. And actually, does this transform down to 0.1 so that makes it small? So since this is big, I'm going to bring that right into there. And I'm going to go and say $job / export / okay, this what's the okay, this is no normal jack. No normal jack. All right. I'm going to go ahead and save to disk. All right, it's saved to disk. Now we have a no normal jack in here. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring in my UE4. All right, so we have a UE4, and I'm going to bring in, create a new folder here, and I'm just going to call this imports. And I'm going to bring in my information that I just exported. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, export. Okay, normal jack. Now bring that in. Okay, everything should be fine. Okay, since it says right here, material import method, do not create material. If we put that and create a new material, because we don't have any kind of colors or anything associated, we want to go ahead and create a new material. I'm going to go ahead and import all and bring that in. All right, so if we have this object here, and it's looking kind of small, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and give it a scale of about 100. Oops. Oh, let's make it 50. I think it's going to be too big. Oops. 5. Okay, let's make this 5. Oh, great. Huh, that's what I get for screwing around here. 0.5. Okay, then lock it. Make this 50. Well, that's quite a bit too big again. Now let's make it even smaller. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So we've got this object here. Now, if we were going to go in and create a brand new material for this, let's go ahead and create a brand new material for it real quick. And I'm going to call it m/no normal. The object looks, just fine, as if it already had a material associated with it. Well, okay, well, let's just go with that, it's applied here, no normal jack. Okay, we're going to drop in here, and let's give it some quick color here. Let's make it some kind of a red, nice and simple. Okay, we got some red. Okay, save, we got some red color. All right, so it's red. Now look what happens once we build this thing. This is what's really freaky. Now I'm going to go ahead and build. Okay, we're not terribly fast here. We try to go as fast as possible. Okay, so a lot of times you might find out that this object actually gets if you don't have the proper normals in here, your object will render black. It will come in very dark, and this is very, very, very frustrating. And so what you have to do is when you're in Houdini, make sure to go ahead and turn those normals on. If your object is black or dark for some unknown reason, of which I do not know, which it could be almost anything, go ahead and hit those and put the normals on it, and that will probably remedy whatever your situation is. So go ahead and make sure to put those normals on here, because otherwise the lighting is not going to build. Okay, now a lot of times that you're going to be building with custom geometry, and a lot of times that you don't have materials, or sometimes you are material, but pretty much you want to have some kind of material going in whenever you go into Houdini here. And so what I did for this object here is we have a material network up in here, and I have a material here called jackmat, and it's a very simple material, and all it has is the texture on here. And now if I go ahead and we have the material there, it's all linked together, always turned on, and I'm going to go ahead and transform this object. Well, let's see. It still came in small, so I'm going to leave it right there. Yep, that's going to be problems here. Now we're going to go ahead and export this object into the engine. So once again, we have the material already put in here and with the textures. So go ahead and export to FBX. So I'm going to call this just normal jack. All right. Okay, normal jack. I'm going to go ahead and import here. All right, now when loading things in, we have the choice of loading where it says, okay, just bring everything and we can import the scene, we can scale things up. And for this, I will want to scale this object, and so I want to scale it up 10 times to be a little bit bigger. But we want it to auto-generate the collision because a lot of times I remove a lot of the other stuff. Here's a lot of the other things that could be done here, is like importing normals method, import normals, or compute normals, and so forth. This is where I get a lot of things. So definitely you want to import the normals, compute the normals. It's much better for Houdini to be in control of those normals. Vertex color import out, you can ignore or you can replace or bring in your Houdini normals and so forth. But the big issue here is that when it comes to creating a new material, if you create it under, search it under the root and create a new material, now when you create a new material, it's not going to, it's going to create a brand new UE4 material and so forth. And so therefore, it's going to completely ignore what you did. But if you go into create do not create material, you get a little option. It says for import textures and so forth. So if we click on import textures, what it will do is it will import the texture along with the object. So did I just tell it not to import the other? Let me try, see if I can try to import this again here. Import normal jack. Okay, yeah, do not create them, import the textures. Okay, so what you get here is that it's not going to even give you the materials. It's not going to give you the textures, even if you even have it inside of the FBX. So that's you're going to be kind of stuck with that information here, and you're going to be, going to be SOL, I'm afraid, as the word would be. And let me go ahead and build the lighting to make sure that everything. Always make sure to build your lighting whenever you're bringing in new objects. You have to test to see if everything is going to work as expected. All right. Now, when you're creating, no matter what happens, it either create a new material or doesn't create a material, it's not going to bring in any textures. Now, what you have to do, if you want it to start bringing in textures, this is the weird part. What you got to try to do then is you got to create a material in Engine beforehand. And let's go ahead and create a material in Engine beforehand. We're going to call this um, M norm and no normal jack. I'll just call this M jack. Let's rename this since we didn't use this before. M underscore jack. Okay, and let's give this some kind of base color. All right, let's just give this some kind of green color. All right, so we've got our object being brought, and we have this thing called mjack. Now, what we have to do then is inside of Houdini, what we have to do is when we have this material, now I call this jack mat. What you have to do is you have to call your material inside of Houdini the exact same name. Now the cases actually count. mjack. Let me make sure that the name has to be exact same as it is in Houdini, as in UE4. Let me see if we've got that right. Okay, that means we have to do it capitalized here. Okay, so the name of this principal shader needs to be Jack, mjack. Okay, very good. Okay, so we've got our character, our object in here. And it's got a material on here that's the exact same name that is in there. Notice that at the end of the day, when we look at our object here, and then we look at the geometry spreadsheet on this, the materials of this, it's called M_Jack. It doesn't matter really what the prefix is, but really what's important is this primitive attribute, shop_material path. Now this is super important. Shop_material path has to have the same name. This is the weird thing that kind of throws people off. If you don't have the shop material path set to a material name that's the exact same thing as in UE4, your stuff isn't going to really translate very well. So I'm going to go ahead and export this, and we're going to call this Jack with Matt. Jack W. Matt. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and import. Save to disk. All right. Now, when we come in here, we import. Okay, I call it Jack with Matt. Okay, I open it up. And then we have this other bit. Now here where it says do not create material, import texture. Okay, it doesn't really matter whether we create a new material or not, because it's going to look for that material name. If you have shop_material path in there, it's going to look and kind of designate and identify with that, and it's going to put the right thing. And whether you, okay, if you put import textures in here, then it's going to work pretty much as is expected. So, and this is going to bring in the texture for us. So if I go ahead and import all, and it's making me a liar. All right, so if we go ahead and import this texture, all right, then you'll notice that this object name, if we have this thing, where is our object? Yeah, with Matt. Okay. Now he has, okay, well, let's check out to see what's up with this guy. Now you notice that the slot name, now whatever's in shop_material path will go into the shop name. And so you notice here it says mjack is the name of the object. So mjack is what's going inside of here. And so even though we have that, it's not going to identify anything. And so because our material mjack that we created before isn't having material, it doesn't bring in the material. So it kind of is trying to, UE4 is trying to think for us. So which is kind of cool and it's kind of not cool at the same time. But if we were to have this, if we were to have this texture object in here, let's bring it here, text parm. Text parameter 2D, okay, we have that brought in. And now for the, what did we call that again? It's called color grid. Okay. If we go ahead and bring that in here. No, it's hiding. It's being bashful. All right. Texture sample. There it is. If we go ahead and drop that in here, then everything will look hokey-dory. All right, if we go ahead and hit save here, then we know we have the exact same texture going on here. So that's the thing you got to remember here. There we have it. It looks exactly like it looks in Houdini then. The materials in Houdini do not translate directly to the materials in UE4. It all goes into creating a material inside UE4 ahead of time, and then inside of Houdini, creating a material or a local material inside of your material network that shares the exact same name, so that when you export, you look over here into the shop material path. Now, if the final name has the same name of the material inside UE4, it's going to work properly. All right, now sometimes it might be a little funky and it may not find things. Now let me see if I can find an example here. Okay. All right, so I've got this object here. And let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and export this. And I say job export, and I'm going to call this demo tile. Demo tile 1. Okay, we've got demo tile 1 going out of here. I save to disk. Now it's looking for what's it looking for? Okay, we have a couple of textures on here. We're looking either for bricks 1 matte or wall 2 matte. All right, so let's go ahead and try to bring that into UE4. Okay, demo tile 1, open that. Now here where it goes, where it says search location, and you go under root. Now typically local is the thing. What it's going to be doing is looking in the local directory, and we say, okay, do not bother creating a material because we're using the material that's actually in there, which is the bricks 1 or the wall 2 material. If we import that, we notice that our object that was brought in. Okay, it has the slots already geared up with the names that we put in here, but it didn't create an association here inside of the actual material. Now we did everything that was right, and we know that we have these materials already inside of the folder. Just as proof, here if we go into content and then we go into here in the top-down dungeons, and we here, like I said, for our walls, we're looking for wall 2 texture. Yeah, there's wall 2 texture. You know, it's sitting right here, but it didn't find any of that. What we have to do then is that when we are bringing in the object, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. When I'm bringing in the object, if we tell it to look somewhere other than the current directory, it will probably find it. So here, local, where it goes under parent or really under root, or if you're really desperate, say under all assets, and they're going to look over all of the engine assets and it's going to look over for everywhere. But usually under root is usually adequate for almost everything that you're working with. If you go import all, okay, now we'll see that if we bring in the object, whoa, that's really big. But let's take a look at it. It has its texture objects already built into it already because these materials have already been built into it. Now you have to excuse this one that says default material. There is a collision object on this object that I created already, and this collision object doesn't have any material, and so that's why it goes to the default and so forth. So that is kind of the idea that when you're importing thing, make sure to duplicate the file name or the material name inside Houdini that you're going to be bringing in to Engine. If it has the exact same name as a material that already exists in Engine, it will find it. However, if there's some kind of discrepancy, it isn't going to find it, and that can be very, very, very frustrating. Okay, so you're probably saying, okay, well, that's all good and fine for Azure, but what about if you're going to be using Houdini Engine? Aha! Now, Houdini Engine brings in a whole new interesting set of rules. Okay, now I have a preference here. Now, it's it will work. It will work, I promise you. But it tends to be kind of slow, and I don't really want to show it off on the demonstration here because it's slow. But in Houdini, it is possible to create. Here we are on the top level here. It is possible to create digital assets that are in the SOP level. So if we have G here, well, let's go throw in a geometry here. And I'm going to call this SOP level HDA. Okay, into there. Now if we create a subnetwork here, and then we create a SOP level HDA. And now this is where we can create this. Let's go ahead and see if we can actually go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and inside of our SOP level DHDA, let's go ahead and bring in just a grid real quick. All right, so it's 10 by 10. Okay, let's just make this 5 by 5. Oops, 5 by 54, don't want that. And if we want like the Squidward here. So I'm gonna go grab the squid. All right, Squidward SOP, okay, squab. All right, cool. Now if we do a copy to points, okay, there's our Squidward, and he's standing at a right, so we've got an army of squids getting ready to march off to war. Okay, now if we were to go ahead and build this digital asset here, all right, create digital asset. Let's go ahead and create it, and we're going to call this just SOP level HDA. And we'll go to job HDA, SOP level HDA, accept. Okay, there's all my information. I'm just going to keep this as is. And then I'm going to go off into UE4 and see if we can bring this in. Okay, import. Okay, SOP level HDA. All right, that's what we wanted to bring in. Now everything brings in okay, but when we bring it into Engine, it's going to take a really long time to register. It's still thinking, it's still going, but if you're not used to this long waiting time, then this can be really frustrating, and it can be very confusing for somebody. They're saying, hey, what's going on here? Why is this thing bringing in? Okay, I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm going to have to talk to the Houdini folks. Oh, there it goes. Okay, it is here, and there's my army of squids. Okay, there we got this. Where's my army of squids here? SOP level HDA, yes. Okay, there's my army of squids. It does work, but it took a very long time. My suggestion, and this is just my own preference, is in Houdini, don't create your objects on the SOP level. Create all of your digital assets on the object level. If you deal with that, then everything is. But notice here that even though we did, and it did take a long time, Houdini Engine took care of all of the stuff for us. Did you notice that the squid came in? Let's go ahead and create another version of this real quick here. Let's create a new subnetwork. And I'm going to call this, okay, I'm going to call this object level HDA. Okay, and inside of this, I'm going to create some geometry. And inside of here, I'm going to lay down a quick grid. Go 5 by 5. And then I'm going to go grab Stosh. Yeah, I know it says Tommy, but I could call this guy Stosh instead. Now, if we copy Stosh to points, oh, okay, look at that. He's laying flat here. Okay, so what can we do in order to change that? So let's go ahead and add some normals here. And maybe add some UVs in order to fix this. Let's say normals. All right. And then where we have polygon, we go into a polyframe. And then if we throw this in here, okay, do we have enough information to straighten him out? Polyframe, if we put N in high here for the tangent U, there he goes. All right, cool. All right, so we have our army of stashes up and going. Okay, now this is, like I said, this is at the object level. So let's go ahead and create a digital asset, object level HDA. And this goes into $job/HDA. Click accept. Click accept again. Okay, now let's go back to UE4 and bring in our object level HDA. Now we're going to bring this into here. Okay, now this does take a while because the Stosh object, as well as the squid object, seems to take a very, very long time. But still, it's my general preference to kind of create digital assets within the object level. It seems to behave much better in that regard. All right, so we're waiting here. Okay, so we're still hanging in there. So it's really taking its good old time. Okay, there's our army of stashes, all ready to rock and roll. And kind of now notice here that Houdini Engine took care of all of the information for us. It took care and it created internalized inside of this object. It created a new material, created the texture objects, created all the associations. So bringing in a object with textures already on it is a kind of like a really good way. Houdini Engine is an awesome way of bringing in objects into the engine within the context of getting the right materials and getting the right look without having to do any kind of translation. And you didn't need to create a material ahead of time. You were just ready to rock and roll. And so that's a very, very good thing. Now, you don't necessarily always have to do that, but that's pretty cool. Okay, now there is one limitation with the digital assets. And that is when you're dealing with digital assets, you can't access data that's not originating from the asset itself. So if the digital asset is referencing data, then Houdini Engine won't know what to do with it. Okay, let's give an example here. All right, let's go back to Houdini. And we have our object level there. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a whole bunch of jacks here. Let's create another, let's just say, let's call this a new subnetwork, and we're going to call this a okay, what are we going to do? Okay, so, okay, actually have one already set up ahead of time. So what we have here is a dungeon tile reference. All right, so in here, we've got a bunch of dungeon tiles here ready to rock and roll. And so these are each pulling in from a local coordination. So these are pulling in geometries that are solved, locally on my disk. And so we're going to go ahead and instead of outputting to ROP here, we're just going to create a digital asset with that. So I got the dungeon tile reference, and that's going to create a digital asset out of this. $OB job slash HDA. Click accept. Okay, no changes. Okay, accept. Okay, no changes. All right, very good. So we've got this object here, and this is going to be brought in big, so I'm going to have to remember to knock this one down here. But let's go back into UE4. All right, we're going to get rid of our objects and our army of stashes here. All right, let's import into that. And then we created the dungeon tile reference, HDA. We just referenced that in. Okay, we've got that going here. And let's see if we can bring that in here. Okay, so where's my object? Okay, let's bring that in again. Engine tile reference. Oh, there's two of them already. Okay. So that bringing in is really, really, really big. Okay, now it has problems bringing in stuff if it's not located within the digital asset itself. Okay. All right. Okay, there's our little object. So it did bring it in, but it didn't bring in any of the proper textures and so forth, which is problematic. Now, if we go back to Houdini here, and we go into the dungeon tile reference here, and if we wanted to embed the information into the uh, information, so here is a dungeon tile embedded HDA. Okay, in here I have this tile, and you'll notice here that, oh, this is difficult to see. Let me go ahead and allow the editing so that we can see it, that in each one of these, that we're using an opdef statement. And that means is that this digital asset actually has the information stored into it. Now, I'm having troubles bringing these objects in through an opdef. So if we have this dungeon tile embedded HDA, if we go ahead and bring that into UE4, okay, it brings in, but then it just hangs. Okay, so that is kind of problematic. So what's the solution to do? If we can't bring in objects and we can't reference objects and we can't use abstract objects, what are we going to do? Well, this is actually kind of confusing and kind of a blessing at the same time. Because then what we can do in Houdini is take advantage of what's called is object referencing. I'm going to go ahead and delete these objects here because they're kind of just taking up space. And we're going to get rid of that just because I get distracted too easily. All right, now when you're instancing objects, there are two techniques for instancing. The first technique is on the SOP level, and the second is on the object level. So let's go ahead and go with each one of these techniques. All right, let's see. I believe I have, all right, let's go here. SOP level HDA. All right, so I've got this geometry set in here, and we've got the SOP level HDA. And we have our digital asset in here. Is this an actual digital asset? Okay. Now we're in the SOP level, and we have our squabs here, and they're all ready to march off to war. Okay, now this isn't the one I was looking for. Okay, we've got Stas object instance, and then Roberto stop instance. Okay, this is the one I was looking for. Okay, I'm going to enable it so that we can look at it. And so here we have Roberto here, and then we've got Roberto just copied to a grid a whole bunch of times. Now notice here what we've got on here is I press pack and instance. When I have pack and instance, then the information will be brought in as expected, and then we can either bring the geometry and the information in, or we can pull it from the actual engine itself. We can embed the information in there. But in this case, we want to import Roberto along here, and so we should be able to bring everything. But the important part is pack and instance. Now this is kind of cool here. Now I'm going to go ahead and go into UE4, and then I'm going to import inside of my Roberto. So Roberto SOP instance. All right, I'm going to go ahead and drop that in here. Okay, and now it's compiling. And like I said, Houdini Engine takes care of the materials for you. So thank you for the folks over in the. Now notice here that when we go and we did the pack instance and so forth, everything is copacetic and everything's cool. But what's cool is if you go over here to Houdini instance inputs, which is part of the detail here, we see a picture of just Roberto just by himself in his lonesomeness. Now that's fine, and now Roberto is now basically a UE4 object now. We can now change this to whatever we want. If we wanted to like make this a chair, we can make this a chair. And so all the instances of Roberto have been swapped into the chair. Let's see if I can go ahead and undo this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. I'm going to show you what happens if if you don't do that, which could be problematic. Go ahead and delete that, and delete this digital asset here. Delete. All right. Now, if you go into here, now if you don't press pack an instance, everything's going to go along basically as expected. Roberto SOP instance. Okay, we're going to go ahead and save node type. So we've gone ahead and saved into that. So let's go ahead and re-import the Roberto SOP instance. We're going to drop that in here. And there's our army of Robertos just going along. But notice that what's different here now is if we go over into the details of Roberto here, instead of the instance, we are now getting the generated meshes. And if we look over at generations and we open this up, you'll see that what was brought in is not the individual instance Roberto, just one version of Roberto. We brought in this situation, 25 versions of Roberto. So this is actually really big and really fat. So what we want to do is when you're bringing in stuff into Engine using Houdini Engine, you want to use that pack instance. Now this does provide us with one additional benefit. Now I'm going to go into here and just turn it back on again, which I think is really cool. I'm going to go ahead up. Okay, Roberto SOP instance. I'm going to go ahead and save the node type. And we're going to go back in here to UE4. And then we're going to go back in. And then we are going to rebake our stuff. Cooking actions. Okay, if we rebuild and recook our asset, okay, now the instance version of Roberto comes back into place, and we have to wait for the shaders to continue building. Okay, so now it returned back to where it was. Now suppose that we wanted, let's see, half of our Robertos to be Robertos and half of our Robertos we wanted to be chairs. Okay, I'm going to hit plus here. And what that does is it creates another instance point here. And then what we can do is we can have 50% Robertos and 50% chairs. So here, I'm going to go chair. Okay, so there we go, 50-50. Some chairs and some Robertos. All right, and we can keep doing this all day long for however we want. We can actually distribute this now. Let's say we want to go and we want some rocks. So I'm going to go ahead and get some rocks. Okay, that's a very ugly rock, but it's a rock all the same. So we've got rocks, Robertos, and chairs. And I'm going to go ahead and move this over to something a little prettier, like a bush. Okay, so that enables it to do this. So doing the packing inside of the copying to the SOP enables us to go ahead and do all those crazy things inside of this. All right, so there's the magic formula, pack an instance. Now that is how you instance on the object level. Now what if you want to instance instead of on the SOP level or inside of inside the SOP level, you want to do it on the object level. Okay. Here we have, okay, so I know I have one created an object instance, so is it this one? Okay, here we go. Now in this situation, I have some geometry. I'm going to go ahead and hide this. We've got Stosh here. And we have a grid. Okay, this is a standard 5 by 5 grid, 5 rows, 5 columns, nothing too exciting here. Now, I'm going to turn these off and I'm going to put it all together. Instead of doing my instancing inside of the SOP level, I'm going to do it here and I'm going to use an instance SOP, or the instance operator here. Now, for the instance object, I'm going to click over here where it says instance tab, and then I'm going to call on the object level, I'm just going to call Stosh. That's what I want. Whatever Stosh is displaying, that's what I want. Now, where do we know how to copy that to? Now, we have to drop into the instance operator, and then we can tell it what to instance. And in this situation, I am importing on the grid. So therefore, wherever there's the grid, go ahead and place Stosh. Okay, there's my Stosh in there. All right, now that we would go ahead and here's the Stosh instance objects. If we go ahead and save node type, now go back to UE4. All right, let's get rid of our Robertos. Let's go get our Stosh. All right, now we have our army of Stoshes being brought in, and they're ready to rock and roll and go off to war. Okay, very cool. Now, this technique I used is now last week when we were dealing with creating buildings and so forth, what we used points to represent objects or abstractions inside of UE4. And those abstractions actually corresponded to building geometry and so forth. Now, I don't have an exact duplicate of this, but you're going to use the exact same technique. You're going to use the technique of instancing on the object level and bring it in here. And that's what's going to be it. And the nice part of that is that you don't have to create inside Houdini. You don't have to bring the objects into Houdini. You can keep them abstracted. If you wanted to, you could create a proxy inside Houdini. You don't have to have the full object. You can leave the full object inside of the UE4 context and you don't have to worry about it. The only thing that you have to worry is that if you get the material name correctly, just make sure that it has the exact same material name. It could be a placeholder inside of Houdini and it wouldn't matter. Get the material name, make sure that the shop underscore material path is set to whatever it is inside of UE4, and then set your point in there and then do a point reference for your abstract object and it will replace it in there, because when you go into Engine, you just change the object type for the instance. We gotta get this. You just change the instance type to what you want, and you have all the material and you have all the data, and it stays within the context of the engine. It doesn't necessarily have to go into Houdini. Now, if you want to bring it into Houdini as a visual reference, that's fine. But this is great because then you can create stuff within the digital engine, within the Houdini engine, that is allowed to remain within the context of the digital engine itself, of the UE4 engine, and it never actually has to go into the Houdini context. Now that is going to be the demonstration of what I'm going to show next week, is that if we take something like, if we take one of our object building and then we're going to use the point instancing, how would we actually use that in order to never actually go into Houdini and actually have the actual assets in there, but we're going to use the object definition in UE4, and it's going to stay in there. And that we're going to take advantage of that to never actually bring anything into Houdini, but it's going to stay inside Engine, and Houdini is going to manipulate and move objects around. All right, that is all that I wanted to cover for today, and I thank you for your patience when dealing with all these technical difficulties. We're always trying to improve on things, and having you provide your suggestions and your feedback is always appreciated. If you like what you saw, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you go check me out on Facebook, that's Chris Rhoda, and check out the Houdini users group for Orlando, that's the OHUG, and or check me out on LinkedIn. That's Chris Rhoda, and we've got TechArt EDU. And just as a reminder for all you folks in the Orlando or Central Florida area, we will have a Houdini user group meeting for the Orlando or Central Florida area next Friday at 7 o'clock. So all you folks be on the watch out there. It's going to be really cool because Emma is going to be giving her demonstration on the USD integration with Houdini. Now this is like super big, especially in the film world, and it's making strong headways into the real-time world. I was just going over the UE4 teacher's guide for UE5, which is the next generation. It won't be available for a year, but they're telling people, they're telling instructors to start getting rid of this, start looking into this stuff already right now, and start getting your students ready. And they said, yes, go ahead and learn USD, what you're saying about USD as a film thing. Well, I can tell you already that the folks over at Epic Games are very bullish on the USD concept, and they will be incorporating USD into the normal pipeline and workflows. So Emma is going to be giving an introduction to USD within the context of Houdini next week. All right, thank you very much for joining me today and this week. I look very forward to seeing you next Friday at 3 o'clock for our next version of Houdini Secrets. And if you can make it, come to our Orlando Houdini Users Group meeting on Friday night at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.